There's been controversy surrounding Snow White ever since Rachel Zegler opened her mouth. Well, there was another actor who was not involved with the production who was trying to make this as controversial as possible. That being Peter Dinklage, who apparently has not seen Snow White and said that the dwarves all lived in a cave. Now, because of that Park Place reporters, we have a response from Warwick Davis, famous for starring in Willow, Harry Potter, Star Wars, and more, talking about the inclusion, and by that we mean exclusion, of dwarf actors in cinema. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is average-sized fellow Mr. Vash Sky. Vash, how's the air up there?
Doing okay, doing all right. It's unfortunate, Jonas, because I live in Arizona, and the taller you are, the closer you are to the sun, so it's not always advantageous.
It's I've been out to Arizona. It's pretty hot. It's a dry heat though, so maybe it's not as bad. But this one out of That Park Place in WDW Pro, you guys, this is truly an exclusive. This is not that we found something and we're putting it online. This is an interview and questions that were asked that no one else was asking for reasons that we think are ridiculous. But we're glad that this question was asked and answered in the way that it was. Warwick Davis, unhappy about dwarf actor exclusion in Hollywood, says it's a shame. Well, let's get into it. Warwick Davis is not pleased with how dwarf actors are being treated as of late in Hollywood, and he thinks his voice should be heard. One of the most famous short actors in the history of Hollywood is striking a decidedly different tone than Peter Dinklage when it comes to how characters of a smaller stature are being cast. In an exclusive interview with That Park Place and Force of Light Entertainment, Warwick Davis had interesting commentary on the current situation with Disney and broader Hollywood. Davis is a prolific actor, having worked in multiple starring roles for major franchises like Star Wars, Harry Potter, The Leprechaun, Willow, and more. When Warwick speaks, Hollywood should listen. By the way, he's a charmer. He did a great job on stage. Regarding the Walt Disney Company and its upcoming Rachel Zegler Snow White live-action remake, Warwick Davis confirmed that he had not been contacted by Disney regarding the movie at any time. This is shocking, considering Mr. Davis is a true star and could have provided a large amount of gravitas to the importance of the tale. Who else could have ever played the role of Doc better than Warwick Davis? When asked why he thought Disney didn't reach out to him at any point, he replied, "It seems they're moving in a different direction." Later, during an ICCC question and answer panel in Nashville, Tennessee, Mr. Davis was asked again about the current situation with dwarf actors being excluded from roles by a Hollywood system that seems to favor CGI or digitally altered actors. Well, it's interesting. Recently, you're seeing lots of short fictional characters being played by normal actors. Warwick Davis was asked about this, and he said, it's interesting. Recently, you're seeing lots of sort of short fictionally characters being played by normal size actors shrunk digitally. I mean, at first, I sort of excused it, thinking there's not really the pool of talent to draw from, like with The Lord of the Rings, for example. So I sort of excused that for happening. But recently, they're doing it more and more, and I think it looks scary almost. It's not a good look. And of course, you can just do it with a British accent if you want it to sound even cooler. It's unclear if Davis was referring to the upcoming Snow White in regards to digitized characters. One might also remember how Willy Wonka's Oompa Loompas have been generated recently. However, it remains to be seen how the dwarfs in Snow White are animated. If they're motion captured by normal-sized actors, it could be another hit against dwarf and little person professionals. Mr. Davis continued, "It's a shame because there's a lot of really talented short actors in the world, but they're not getting a chance to do what they do. Some of them have trained for years to do this, and they're just not getting a look in. It would be wrong to cast someone as a disabled person in a wheelchair with an able body, I think, but they're doing it all the time with short people. I'm not actively campaigning on this, but it would be nice if my voice was heard on these issues." Vash, I don't know if you've read this article before, but what's your reaction to that?
I think it's a very sensible reaction because, I think Warwick makes a great point here. You do have roles that are limited to certain people or individuals because their characteristics happen to line up with the characters that they portray on screen. Fair enough. I think there's a good reason to do that in especially in some circumstances and instances. But we throw that out the window when it comes to people of smaller stature like Warwick Davis himself. And I just think about the opportunities that were afforded historically in Hollywood to those individuals, and now that's being stripped away. Do we ever get another Warwick Davis or Peter Dinklage, for that matter, if these roles are being stripped from them in the way that Hollywood is doing now?
I totally agree. And there's a quote going around, and I'm not sure the attribution here, but I think it's often being attributed to Snow White when I think it's a production of Time Bandits. There was a little person actress who was talking about some discussions that were happening with the producers of Time Bandits, the Taika Waititi series for Apple TV Plus or whatever they call their streaming service. And she said that the discussions were happening. Her and her husband were having those discussions, or maybe it was her partner. And then the comments from Peter Dinklage started to surface of him talking about, well, that they're probably in this article, actually, here, if we can find it. Warwick Davis wanting to voice in Hollywood. Many believe Snow White was altered in response to the criticisms that Peter Dinklage levied against Disney and the industry in an interview 2 years ago. There he is right there. Peter Dinklage. I'm not sure he wanted to take that picture. This isn't the first time an actor has taken a position that appears at odds with Dinklage. Dylan Postal, who plays Hornswoggle in the wrestling industry, has been highly critical on major shows such as Piers Morgan and Tucker Carlson. This is the thing that just really bothers me. When somebody tries to talk about how something needs to be cast in Hollywood and they exclude other actors, especially actors with such a specific skill set. In that panel, they talk about specifically Vern Troyer. Well, by the way, one of the few Americans that was allowed to be in the Harry Potter series. He played Grippic, one of the goblins at Gringotts, but Warwick Davis did the voice. I think that's one of the few reasons that an American was allowed in there, because he was of such small stature. And then when Grippic was in the Deathly Hallows films, I forget which one, probably Deathly Hallows Part 2, played in body and voice by Warwick Davis. One of my favorite, that whole Grippic thing, especially after a certain person passes away. Really, really great performance there, and something that I don't think that you can do with CGI and have the same effect. But to have someone come in and say that it is morally wrong to cast all of these people who are great at their jobs in their roles, it's not like Warwick Davis is coming in and trying to pour something vile into Peter Dinklage's cornflakes. It seems like Peter Dinklage is the biggest actor that happens to be of short stature out there, and it seems like he's offended that there are other people who are maybe more well liked. I don't know. I don't want to talk too bad about Peter Dinklage. It just seems like he's got a big chip on his shoulders.
Well, I think he was speaking from a presuppositional argument in that it was, in his context, this was putting down people of little stature, even though dwarves, well, used in the comedic sense, at least in the original film, were beloved by everybody who saw them, and the company still sells plenty of merch based on their characterizations and their characters today, because they were so beloved in that picture. So in one way, you can look at those characters and go, oh, well, they're making a mockery of dwarfism. On the other hand, you can look at those characters and say, well, those are just amazing characters that happen to be dwarves. You described the depiction that he gave, which was, oh, they live in a cave. It's like, no, they live in a cottage, and they happen to work in a mine for themselves, which makes them independently working dwarves, right? But the characterization I think he placed on them was inaccurate, and from that he developed an opinion that I think has done damage to that community for sure.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, I think it's the same thing I've said with the Rachel Zegler situation. You need to get yourself a good publicist, and if you want to be the kind of person who is closed off and you want to be so serious of an actor that everyone thinks that you're difficult to work with, or someone who is unapproachable and therefore you don't have the lovable demeanor of Warwick Davis. By the way, Warwick Davis is not just going around singing songs or anything like that. He's a real person, and he has a good handshake to him. I'm not trying to turn him into some mythical creature here, but there's a reason that he's very well liked, and maybe the fact that he's put in the effort and gone and done Comic-Cons, and the fact that he enjoys the genre work that he's doing, it might speak to the reason that he is so well loved. And if Peter Dinklage wants to be a serious actor, well, I'm trying not to make allusions to Grumpy, or Oscar the Grouch might be a better way to put it. You have to be lovable Grumpy, and I don't think that's what he's going to end up doing if he continues down this path. Now, with that being said, is there anything else we need to talk about before we wrap this up?
I just hope that more opportunities can be afforded of everybody of every single stature, no matter who they are, especially if you have roles that that fit, let's say, those statures. I hope we can be more inclusive than exclusive, but this is modern Hollywood today, so all bets are off on what they'll actually end up doing.
Yeah. I'm really not looking forward to Snow White at this point. I think, there might be a couple of things in there that are so bad it's good, but I think when this comes out, it's probably going to be about as bland as the Beauty and the Beast live action remake. The Beauty and the Beast live action remake, which, by the way, had original songs by Alan Menken and somehow became blah. That's quite an achievement, in my opinion, right there. Disney just seems to be catering to the lowest common denominator right now, hoping that you will remember what they once were. A shadow now is what they are. Well, that being said, let's throw this to the commenters. What do you think about the Peter Dinklage and Warwick Davis situation? We didn't ask him about the Willow series, which has now been stricken from Disney+. We also didn't ask him if they had contacted him about the new Harry Potter series. It'd be a little early on that because I don't think they've written scripts yet, but I sure would love to see him in that. That being said, like this video if you like this video, and consider subscribing to That Park Plays for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.